Before the world called him a hero, before the Nobel Prize and the global applause, Nelson Mandela was simply a man who had every reason to hate. He had spent 27 years behind bars, stripped of freedom, family, and dignity. He was beaten, humiliated, and denied the basic rights that others took for granted. Yet, when the prison gates opened and the world watched to see what he would do next, Mandela didn't raise his fists in anger. He opened his arms with grace. This video tells the story of how a man once labeled a terrorist chose the path of forgiveness, not as a weakness, but as a weapon of peace. His journey wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. He forgave not because they deserved it, but because he knew the cost of bitterness. Resentment, he once said, is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. Today, we walk through the moments that tested his heart, the meetings with his jailers, the silence after betrayal, and the inner decision that transformed South Africa. This is not just history, it's a blueprint for anyone who has ever been wronged and wondered, how do I move on? Mandela's understanding of forgiveness didn't begin in the presidency, nor did it start at the negotiating table. It began quietly, during the long, lonely years on Robben Island. There, locked away from sunlight and silenced from his people, Mandela was left with one companion that could not be taken: his thoughts. In the beginning, those thoughts were filled with rage. He remembered the beatings, the injustice, the lies. But over time, something began to shift. Day by day, rock by rock, as he worked in the limestone quarry under the blazing sun, he realized that his mind was the last place he could allow the apartheid system to win. They could imprison his body, but they would not control his soul. He began to understand that true freedom starts with letting go of the chains within. And so, Mandela began the quiet, invisible work of transformation. The kind that takes more strength than rebellion and more courage than revenge. Years later, when Mandela was finally released from prison in 1990, the world waited to see if he would seek vengeance. Many expected blood. After all, the wounds of apartheid were still raw. Entire generations had suffered. But Mandela surprised the world. He stood on the steps of City Hall in Cape Town and spoke not of payback, but of peace. He invited former enemies to the table, said, "Let us build a society in which all South Africans will be able to walk tall, without fear in their hearts." That moment wasn't just political theater. It was the fruit of years of inner healing. Mandela had trained his heart to see his oppressors not as monsters, but as fellow human beings trapped in a system of ignorance. Forgiveness for him was not a denial of pain. It was the reclaiming of power. The true test of Mandela's commitment to forgiveness came during the formation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Instead of secret trials or revenge courts, Mandela and Archbishop Desmond II led a national effort that encouraged victims and perpetrators to speak. Openly, publicly, it was raw. There were tears, confessions, unimaginable crimes were laid bare. Yet Mandela insisted, there is no future without forgiveness. Imagine the strength it took to sit with the very men who enforced the laws that once tried to break him. Imagine the restraint it took not to explode in rage, but to listen, to forgive, to lead. One of the most symbolic acts of Mandela's forgiveness came when he invited his former jailer to attend his presidential inauguration in 1994. The image of Mandela, smiling next to the man who once watched over his captivity, sent a message to the world. The past would not dictate the future. That invitation wasn't just a gesture, it was a revolution. It told every South African, black and white, that reconciliation was possible, that we could rise above the roles history had forced us into, that we could choose humanity over hatred. Mandela's forgiveness was not limited to grand political gestures. It was embedded in his daily life. He spoke kindly about his former adversaries. He remembered their names. He learned their stories. Even with people who betrayed him politically, Mandela often responded with dignity. He said, "People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love." This belief, that even the cruelest among us have the capacity for change, defined his presidency. Made his leadership not just effective, but transformational. He led not with fear, but with faith in the human spirit. But let us be clear, forgiveness was not easy for Mandela. It cost him everything. His marriage with Evelyn crumbled while he was in prison. His relationship with his children was fractured. He missed birthdays, graduations, funerals. There were moments when grief overwhelmed him, when anger boiled in his chest. But each time, Mandela returned to the same truth. Carrying hatred only delays healing. And if he was to lead a nation into freedom, he had to be the first to let go. Perhaps one of the most powerful examples of Mandela's philosophy came during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. South Africa had just emerged from apartheid. The nation was divided, scarred. The Springboks, the national rugby team, had long been a symbol of white dominance. But Mandela saw an opportunity, donned the green jersey, once hated by the black population, and walked onto the field to shake hands with the white captain Francois Pienaar. The stadium froze. Then it roared. In that moment, forgiveness became visible, tangible, global. That handshake did what speeches could not, stitched a torn nation back together. Mandela's famous quote, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies," wasn't just metaphor, it was lived wisdom. He understood that unforgiveness corrodes the soul, it clouds judgment, it keeps us chained to the very things we want to escape. Mandela's choice to forgive freed not just himself but millions who watched and followed. He gave us a roadmap. Forgive not because they are right, but because you deserve peace. In a world today filled with division, betrayal, and cycles of revenge, Mandela's legacy reminds us that real strength is not in domination, but in discipline. That healing begins when we stop rehearsing our pain and start releasing it. Forgiveness is not forgetfulness. It's a decision to say, "You no longer control my narrative." It's not weakness. It's power in its highest form. As we close this episode, let us reflect on the lesson Mandela left behind. Not every leader can change a constitution. Not every person will lead a nation. But every heart holds the power to forgive. Every soul can choose peace over poison. And maybe, just maybe, that's how we begin to change the world. One act of grace at a time. We'll hear the speech that echoed around the globe and see how Mandela, even on trial, chose truth over silence. Subscribe now, leave a comment with your thoughts, and tell us, what does forgiveness mean to you? Turn on the bell, because Mandela's journey is just beginning. And remember, the most powerful legacy you can leave behind is not victory.